Welcome to The Trader, a Traitors podcast, a Spotify top 10 podcast. My name's Matthew. I'm a writer working in TV development, and I am a 100% faithful fan of the multi-award winning hit TV competition series, The Traitors. Usually, each episode of the podcast is a deep dive into individual episodes of The Traitors from around the world. But The Trader also features interviews with contestants from the shows. In fact, you could go back and listen to interviews with cast members from UK Series 1, US Season 1, Australia Seasons 1 and 2, and The Traitors Canada. Today, though, it is a new era, and I am interviewing the first, hopefully of many, contestants from The Traitors UK Series 2. And I am so excited because I am joined right now by the traitorous Ash. Ash, welcome to the show. It's been a long time.
I should have done a growl.
Ash, how are you doing today?
I'm good. I was a bit tired earlier, but now that I'm talking to you, I'm kind of woken up a little bit, which is good.
Yes, excellent. That's what we need. And although this is a first time appearance for you on The Trader, you're not really a newcomer to the podcast.
I'm not. I discovered you, I think it was around this time last year. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And let me tell you something, and I'm not being biased, I swear, because I was obsessed with The Traitors, right? Because who wasn't obsessed? And I actually looked up loads of podcasts, and I tried to listen to them, and they were all fucking shit. Sorry. They were, because they just wasn't like, I just didn't get like warmth or like, I think they were just trying too hard. And yours was my favorite one. So there you go. Here we are.
Thank you so much. Yes, here we are. We've made it happen. It's time. Now, I have so many questions to ask you, Ash. Some of them are just my questions personally, but there are so many questions from listeners. People sent in loads of things they wanted to ask me on social media. So lots of things to get through. Let's go for it.
Let's do it.
First, just how has life been since the show aired and since your time on the show?
Well, it's been a bit mad.
Yeah, I bet.
Because I mean, so I still have to have a day job because I've got rent to pay. And then on top of that, we're doing, like obviously the amount of press and podcasts and appearances and things that have been going on. And then on top of that, my normal social life, I'm just kind of like, I need to win the lottery jackpot so that I can give up my day job so I can just do this all the time.
Yeah. I would enjoy that as well. And you've seen the UK season 1 obviously before your season. Had you seen like the US season of the show?
Yeah, so it was December 2022, because I think it came out in November, right? So it was close to Christmas.
Yeah.
I was part of this werewolf group. We used to play werewolf on Zoom during lockdown. Are you familiar with the game?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and I remember the werewolf group going on and on about, have you seen that show Traitors? And I was like, what is this rubbish? And then I kind of gave in and I watched it. And obviously I was just obsessed.
Yeah.
I watched it twice fully in December. And then I was like, okay, I need more. And that's, how I discovered the US version and the Australian version. And so.
And were there any players from any versions of the show that you like admired or you thought, I'm going to borrow their tactics? Which other players did you love on the show?
I loved lots of players, but I wouldn't say necessarily I was going to borrow their tactic, because at that point when I was watching the show, I wasn't even thinking about applying.
Yeah.
It didn't and even when I applied, that wasn't even something that crossed my mind, because I genuinely didn't think I would even be picked. Do you know what I mean? So, so I didn't. But obviously, I really loved Wilf. I thought he was brilliant. And I didn't understand that people were like, oh my God, he's so sneaky. I'm like, dude, he's playing a freaking game. What's wrong with you? And I loved people like Faye and Alyssa. And and Amanda. So basically all the traitors. I was totally team traitor from day one. So that worked out quite well for me.
Yeah, it did. Now, I have to ask some specific questions about your time on the show and things that happened when you were there. Something that happened early on that keeps coming up and it makes me laugh so much. When you were at breakfast and
Right.
Sonia across the table just asked you, "Are you a traitor?" Could you genuinely not hear her because there were lots of people, or were you like a bit thrown by what she was asking?
Well, I get asked this question a lot, right? So genuinely, the first time round, I didn't hear her because even when I talked to friends and my friends were like, because I make that face normally if I can't hear them and they're like, yeah, we knew you can hear her. We just knew. Because also you don't realize it's so loud in that room because everybody's talking.
Yeah.
And I'm like, sometimes I get old lady ears. Do you know what I mean? So, but the second time I did hear her and I was just like, what? I kind of like, I didn't realize how I feel just shows on my face. I was kind of in a bit of a panic, a bit of a tizzy. But then I kind of like, not forget about it, but I just kind of put it to a side. But she was also doing it to other people during the day. And I was like, okay, this is a bit worrying. Like, I don't know if she's being serious, but I felt, you know what? She's a super smart lady. She's going to come after us. Do you know what I mean?
So was she like testing people just to see how they would respond?
I think so. And what happened was, so she wanted to eat melon in the morning. This is why this was called Melon Gate. and she said to herself, she's going to go get melon, and whoever sat in front of the melon is the person she's going to say it to. And that happens to be me.
Oh, you chose the wrong seat.
Oh,
Melon
she's
Gate.
a wonderful
Okay.
lady. Oh,
Yeah. See, yeah, so she seemed good, really good fun. She seemed
is.
Had it crossed your mind before the episode 3 roundtable? So that's the roundtable when Brian was eventually banished.
Mm-hmm.
Had it crossed your mind before that your fellow traitors may turn on you sooner rather than later?
No, not at all.
Okay.
Not at all. And now watching back and watching them, I'm like, you little rascals, you know?
Yeah.
I had no idea because and you see, this is, and I'm sure we're going to be getting into it later on in the pod, but I should have just played the game a bit different, but I should have been a bit more prepared. But also, I'm a team player. Like that's how I operate. I mean, I knew at some point we're going to turn on each other because that's the game, right? Like you have to, because you have to give the room a patsy. Do you know what I mean? Sure. But I had no idea that I was going to be that patsy, and I had no idea it was going to be so early.
Yeah.
You know?
And even after that roundtable, Harry and Paul seemed to try and reassure you in Traitor's Tower. But you know, how much did you believe it from then on in?
None. Come on. I mean, okay, I could be a little bit stupid, but I ain't that stupid. And also, like, I was just thinking, this was my reasoning, right? This is my reasoning. I was just thinking, look, I could sit here and I can continue to argue with them, and we're going to go round and round in circles and nothing's going to be achieved. Like, I'm not really somebody who likes arguing. I just think, okay, you've made your point. This is how it is. We're going to need to move on, you know? And then that's all I can do, because what else can I do? Sure. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, I thought to myself, either my days are numbered or your days are numbered, like one of us. And you still have to work together. Mm-hmm. And you don't want awkwardness, you know?
Yeah. And even beyond that, you know, eventually Miles, and it seemed like you got on with Miles, but Miles turned on you as well at that.
Well, he had to. He didn't have a choice at that round table, on that final round table for me, though, did he? To be fair. So you know, he just didn't.
Yeah. Did that make it feel a bit easier then? Like, could you understand? You know?
Yeah, I mean, I did. But the thing is, I did totally understand. I just wasn't expecting it so soon.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, I just thought, okay, we're going to stick together a little bit,
Yeah.
because that's what you do, like,
And obviously your fellow traitors, they voted for you because they knew you were a traitor, but the faithful didn't know.
no.
What do you think it is that aroused suspicion? Why did some of the other players vote for you, do you think?
You know, so I think there's a few different things here because as human beings, when we're feeling a certain way, we may not be aware of our energy. And I think that's like the kind of energy that you give off. And I should have been a bit more relaxed ultimately.
Okay.
I should have been, and I shouldn't have. I think I was taking it very seriously. And constantly, all I was thinking was, oh my God, what if I get found out?
Yeah.
And I think had I had relaxed a bit more, I would have been a little bit more open.
Yeah.
And that's also the key thing to creating relationships with people, right? Is being able to be open, come across as open, and also be a little bit vulnerable, let them in. And I know that was my down. Like, I think that was a really big downfall for me, genuinely,
Okay.
because I'm the kind of person, I want to go around and I want to talk to everybody. That's how I am in real life. That is what I do. Like, even at school, I was never part of one clique. I was part of all the cliques. Do you know what I mean? So
Yeah.
for me, I wanted to get to know people. And then, so some people use that against you. And that's how it is, because you're looking at every single little detail of how people are behaving.
Yeah.
So I think combine all those things, you know.
Yeah, sure. And now I had other questions for you, but I also put out a call on social media, letting
Right.
people know that you were coming on the Trader. And I had so many questions. So some of the listeners have asked the same questions that I wanted to ask anyway.
Okay.
Some listeners, a lot of listeners have kind of sent the same question. So if you're listening and you think, oh, Matthew's not reading out my question, it's probably just because I've already asked it or someone else asked a really similar question. So I'm trying to cover everything
Yeah.
here.
Trying to combine them.
Yeah. So I'm going to start with a question from Joe. Joe is a previous co-host on the Trader. He's a good friend. He comes on a lot to talk about the show. Big fan. Joe asks a question that someone else then kind of asked too. He said, "Did you feel there was a bit of a boys' club amongst the traitors?" And Gang-Handed Adulterer on X kind of asked the same question. They mentioned a boys' club, and they asked, "Do you think the season would have gone differently if the original traitors had been, there had been more women, basically?"
Um, I'm so happy for this question because I don't get asked this question a lot, and I think I should.
Mm-hmm.
And yes to all those answers. But firstly, I want to say that, like, actually, I was really, really grateful to see Claudia say that.
Yes,
Okay.
yeah,
Because it kind of made space, made way for me to actually talk about it. Because we know how media is, we know how people are. Had I had brought it up first, there's a chance that I would be vilified for bringing up something that I feel was very, very obvious.
Yeah.
And to be honest with you, like 100%, if I had another female in there with me, we would have had each other's backs. There's no doubt. Like, I think Diane would have been fantastic in there. I think Evie would have been fantastic in there.
Yeah.
Because especially because Evie, right? She's all this like sweet, innocent, cutesy, but I'm like, oh, you little naughty girl. Like she's got that little thing in her,
Yeah.
And I'm telling you, Matthew, like I think it could have just changed the entire show.
Yeah.
But saying that also now, I think, the dominoes fall the way that the dominoes fall for a reason. And it's like the butterfly effect, right? If one little thing had changed, would the show have been as good? Would we, if Paul didn't last as long as he did, would we have had that drama? Like, there's a reason why what happened. And I think that is part of what has made this series one of the best shows ever. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely.
What's your opinion on it?
It stood out to me as well before Claudia made her joke about, oh, another man you've picked. Yeah, I also noticed like this is strange that
Yeah.
we've had one female traitor and they got rid of her really. Yeah, it definitely occurred to me as a viewer, like, oh,
Yeah.
this feels skewed. There's
Yeah.
something going on
Yeah.
here amongst just
Yeah. Yeah.
human behavior.
I mean, yeah, and this is, and I think maybe for another time, but it's a definitely a wider conversation to be had. I think,
yeah,
just as a societal and media and all this, do you know what I mean?
yeah,
I think it's definitely a wider conversation to be had of how people can have unconscious bias, you know?
definitely. Yeah,
So
and I've mentioned it on the podcast before, and people can send me horrible comments if they want, but
yeah,
across all I've watched lots of different versions of the show now, and there's definitely a pattern in terms of who are banished early on. It is
yeah,
usually women, often
women,
women of color. Like
yeah,
it just
yeah,
happens
and
across the
older
show.
people, and
And
older
older
people,
people. Yeah.
yeah, and this is actually so true because I mean, if you think about it, it's a bit of a social experiment as well, isn't it? It's
Yeah.
about how we, there's so many different aspects to it. Um, and I think, like, is this something that society does need to address? Because you're absolutely right. Even in the other shows that I've watched, it's been the exact same,
Yeah.
So it's almost like, what chance did I really have? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. It's very, very interesting. And you're right, a whole other like big conversation that's fascinating. Um, Next up, I have questions. Again, they're kind of similar. Faithful J on X asks, do you wish you'd been a faithful instead? And Dan from Brighton asked similarly, in hindsight, do you think you would have played better as a faithful?
No. No, like, listen, when I first applied and stuff, I didn't even think about these things, right? I didn't even think about these things. But once I did genuinely start to think about this, I thought to myself, because I know how I am, right? If I had been faithful, obviously I would have been a bit more relaxed, right? And I would have been a bit more myself, which also means I can be quite mouthy and I can and I just feel like my mouth might have gotten me into trouble.
Okay.
And I just thought to myself, if I have any chance of lasting more than a day, the only way that can happen is by being a traitor.
Yeah.
And I actually stand by that. And also, can I say, because ultimately it's a game, right? The actual traitor bit, I didn't have a problem with. Do you know what I mean? Because for me, I can absolutely differentiate between the actual gameplay and my personal feelings for people.
Yeah.
Like, even if I'd been a faithful, I would never have taken anything personally anyway. Although, I mean, that's hard to say though anyway, isn't it? Because you spend so much time together, you get really, really, really close. Like you do have these close bonds.
Yeah.
But I think to myself, imagine playing Scrabble or like Catan or something, and you're beating your mates. Like, are you going to feel bad about it? No, you're just playing a game.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
Another couple of questions that are quite similar. There's a user called Diane is Walking on Instagram, which I think is an ode to Diane from your show. Diane is Walking asks if you kind of actually maybe answered this a little bit already in a way. If you could pick your fellow traitors from the start, who would you have picked? And Alan's been on the podcast as a host before. Alan asks, similarly, if you didn't choose Miles as your fourth traitor, who else would you have chosen? So, if it was up to you, who else would you have had as a traitor from the start?
I would have chosen, I very likely would have chosen a female anyway, because I think that would have been a nice balance. And I would have picked somebody quite sweet and innocent.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know what I mean? And I think because then people wouldn't have detected her.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? So like for me, those people would have probably been someone like Evie or Molly or even Meg, But I didn't, to be honest, I probably wouldn't have chosen Meg because me and Meg were very, very close anyway. And I thought to myself, like, there's no way, like, I don't know if she could be a traitor. Do you know what I mean? So, But yeah, I would have picked somebody either really sweet and innocent, or I would have picked someone like Diane, because you know what? She did have quite a lot of allies, and she's a strong lady. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I'm like, yes, go on, let's rattle some cages.
A question kind of about gameplay here.
Yeah.
Hearts from Martha, who's on Instagram, asks, is there any part of you that wanted to team up with Miles to get Harry or Paul out really early?
Yes, actually. So after episode 3, like obviously we were in the turret that night and we were going about our killing business, as you do, as traitors, you know what I mean? And then had Claudia not come in and knocked on that door, I was already thinking to myself, Miles, you better watch out, baby. You better be watching these two, because they're going to be coming after you. And so had I had not been in the dungeon, obviously I'm sure that's going to come up at some point in the podcast. But had I had not been in the dungeon, I would have found a way to speak to Miles and been like, you better, like, you need to watch out. We need to have each other's back here. Do you know what I mean? Because they will come after you.
Sure. Okay. Yeah, I guess the dungeon. Well, we could talk about it now. I guess it came at a strange point. How do you feel about it now? Do you wish you had not gone in the dungeon or picked different people to go?
I wish I hadn't gone down. So my mind, and obviously everything happened so quickly, and I was just like, I was so tired. I was emotionally drained from that round table. So your brain isn't working properly. And I was just thinking to myself, my thought process was, see that Paul, he's the mastermind behind this. That's what I was thinking. This is what I was telling myself. So I was like, wherever he fucking is, I am going. I am going to be there. Like, so he immediately volunteered to go in the dungeon. And I wish I'd thought it through a bit better, because all I was thinking at the time was, I'm not allowing you to control the narrative here. So, but also, this is the thing, like, when I look back, I'm like, oh my God, he's so clever. Like, I think he talked us into taking Andrew with us and taking Megs with us. Do you know what I mean? And had it not been Andrew, had it been somebody else, could it have changed it? You know what I mean?
Yeah. Although in the end, I guess it still all came back to bite Paul anyway. Like, it was one of the many pieces that made people think, hold on. So maybe it didn't really work out for him anyway.
No. But you know what? I think every traitor needs a Paul, because he is that amazingly charismatic pantomime villain that everybody loves to hate. And the reason why we all loved him was because he was hilarious and because he's a lovely guy. Do you know what I mean? And that's why so many of us were like, oh my God, Paulie.
And by the looks of Paul's social media, he's still having like a great time from
he is.
Also.
He is. Bless him. And you know what? He's such a strong man. You can imagine he got trolled quite a lot, but you know what? He was like loving it. He's like, oh, bring it on. It's fine.
Well,
I'm like, good on you. Good on you. Do you know what I mean? Yeah,
absolutely. A couple of questions from the same user with a name that I can't pronounce. So their username on Instagram looks like Jed Goofieb. Who knows if that's a real name or not? And first of all, they've asked, who were you closest to in the castle?
I would say Meg and Zach, yeah. And that's why, like, even if you look at the round table, like, Zach just would never vote for me, And it's funny because we were on the train together at the beginning, so I'm wondering is that why we kind of had that little bond, But yeah, Meg and Zach were the people that I was definitely closest to. And there was other people that I got on very well with, but I would say them two were the people who I was definitely closest to.
Yeah. Okay.
And had I had gone to the end, like, there's no way I would have ever voted for either of them two. There's just no way I would have ever done that, So, and had I had known that the dungeon thing would happen the way that it did, I would never have I would have fought for Meg to not be down there,
Yeah,
you
yeah.
know?
Mhm. Jed also asks, did you really have no idea about Diana Ross?
Swear to you. I swear to you. Oh my God. And even when I found out, I didn't believe it. Like I was screaming. I was like, shut up. Immediately I texted Ross. Immediately I texted Diane. I'm like, stop it. You're like, because I still don't see the resemblance. I don't see it. What's wrong with me?
I see it across their eyes, but when people say to me like, "Oh, it's so obvious they're related," I'm like, "No, it's not. It's
It's
not
not.
obvious. Like you think it's obvious because you know, but you would
Yeah.
never have seen that." So
No.
yeah, I'm with you.
Yeah. I was absolutely shocked.
Yeah.
Absolutely shocked.
Alan again. So Alan has been on the podcast, hosted it with me. Big fan. He asks, out of this is quite a specific question. Out of both series of The Traitors UK, you've kind of half answered this, but from season one and season two, which faithfuls would have made phenomenal traitors? Is there anyone that, if they had been given the chance, you think they would have done an amazing job?
I'm trying to think series one. I think had Kieran been given a little longer,
Yeah,
to be honest, I think he would have done really well.
yeah,
And I do honestly think I think Hannah would have done really well.
yeah.
I think she would have been quite a good traitor.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. So, and I was wondering, like, imagine if we could do that again, and but Kieran was brought in a bit earlier. Yeah, I think he would have been brilliant because he's also that kind of person. Like, he's just super lovely and he's super genuine and he's funny. Like, I've hung out with him a few times and he's totally like that. So he would be the perfect traitor because
Yeah.
everybody would just love him, you know?
Yeah. That's my impression as well. I follow Kieran online and he's sent messages. We've had a little brief chat and he seems just like such a lovely man. So
He
I
is.
can see that
He
he would
is.
be really popular and people might just completely trust him. Yeah, yeah. I have a question from Carrie on X. Remember, Ash, I told you that there were some wild questions that came
Yeah,
in?
yeah. Come on, bring it on. I like the wild questions.
uh, Carrie asks, "Where in Walthamstow do you live? And can I hang out with you?" Feel free to not give us your address, Ash.
Obviously, I'm not going to give you my address, but what I will say, I am out in Walthamstow quite a lot. Like, sometimes I'm out in the village, sometimes I'm down in the Rose and Crown, sometimes the Bell or the Checkers, or sometimes on Wood Street.
Yeah.
So you just don't know. I'm all about the place.
Okay. Carrie, there you go. Keep an eye out. Get down the pub. A final couple of questions, really, just from me, actually.
Yeah.
I need to ask this, and I'm so nervous about your answer. How I love Claudia dearly. How was Claudia? How was it being on set with Claudia?
She's amazing, and I'm not just saying that. So obviously I knew who Claudia was because she's been around for donkey's years, isn't it? But I've never really watched her, if that makes sense. Like, I was never really a huge Strictly fan. I watched it this season, but I was never before, so I didn't know her character. So that was something I was super shocked by because she's very quick-witted, she's very dry, she's very kooky, and she's generally hilarious.
Yeah.
And then on top of that, to be that way, and she has like a warmth to her. Do you know what I mean? And I think she's a super, super smart lady. Yeah. So, and she is genuine. Honestly, she's so lovely. And even now, like, I'm sure, I mean, I know I do, and I'm sure others do as well. Like, we'll text her, we'll just DM her on Instagram, and she always talks to us. Do you know what I mean? Yeah.
That's good. I'm so happy to hear that. That's lovely. You've not shattered my illusions.
No, because because I have heard when I've spoken to other people, I have heard that sometimes you can go on shows and the hosts seem like they're nice and they're not really. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Sure.
But talking of nice hosts, also Ed Gamble, absolute bloody legend. Absolutely fucking love him.
Okay.
And he's a Walthamstow resident, you know?
Well, okay, I have to take back all of the bad things. No, I'm just kidding. I may or may not have been quite bitter on my podcast because there was another podcast, but I know nothing about Ed personally, so that's nice to hear.
Oh, do you not? Okay, so oh my God, I was screaming when I found out Uncloaked was happening and he was hosting it and I've got receipts on my Spotify Wrap from last year. Off Menu was my most listened to podcast.
Yeah.
And like, so I was a huge Ed and James fan anyway.
Perfect.
Yeah. And then when I said to the group, I'm like, guys, Ed Campbell is hosting Uncloaked. And most of them were like, who? I'm like, how do you not know who Ed Campbell is? What's wrong with you?
Well, I'm glad you got to meet him. And that he was nice as well. That's really, really good. I wanted to ask to sort of kind of finish off, what was the most unexpected aspect of actually being on the show compared to just watching it, or what was the thing that like you couldn't have prepared for, even though you had seen it on TV?
You know, there's a couple of things actually. One of them on the show is the missions. So a part of me is a little bit glad I got out early because some of those missions I was like, I would be so shit at this. Like literally, I would be so shit. Because I'm just not a very active person. I'm so unfit right now. But bless Diane, I feel a little inspired by her to be like, okay, no, I need to start working out. I need to start looking after myself. But the biggest thing for me is, and I was hanging out with Ross the other night, and we were chatting about this, that when we applied, I genuinely didn't realize what I was applying for.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I didn't realize how huge the show was.
Yeah.
I didn't realize how huge season 1 was until around November, December last year.
Yeah.
And that's when I was like, and then what I wasn't definitely prepared for, because I thought to myself, like, I went out quite early. Like, I understand that I was a traitor, but I did go out quite early. And I thought, who the hell is going to remember that middle-aged Asian woman? Nobody. Like, I genuinely, like, I'm not trying to fish for compliments or anything like that, but I genuinely did think that. I was like, oh, whatevs. Like, nobody, like, I went out early. Nobody's going to fucking remember who the hell I am. So that's the shocking bit, that to constantly be stopped in the street, like to constantly be like, you know, I'm down in Sano's doing my shopping and like people are coming up to you, or like sometimes on the tube you can see like people are like looking at you and they're like, you know, they've got that look on their face and they want to say hello, they want to say something, and they don't, but they just carry on staring at you, and I'm like, oh God. I had one weirdo. So this is also a message to men out there. Please don't do shit like this. But like this one evening, and it was dark, it was late. I came out of the tube station and it was raining. So I was just undercover because I was like, okay, let me try and get my stuff. And I had this guy is like trying to take sneaky freaking pictures of me. I'm like, dude, why you gotta be shady for? Because like he'd already seen me on the tube. He saw that people had already come up to me and asked me for pictures. I'm always happy to oblige. I'm always happy to like talk to anybody who wants to talk to me. Do you know what I mean? So like stuff like that is a little bit creepy, a little shady, right? So I think that's the biggest thing for me, I think, is just constantly, like I was at this TV premiere thing the other night and it had some big name actors and those people are coming up to us and being like, oh my God, traitors. And I'm like, shut the fuck up. Get the hell out of here. You kidding me? So like, that's like the most bizarre thing. Because I'm just like, we're just normal people, aren't we? Like, we're just normal people. We just did a TV show. That's all. Do you know what I mean?
I guess the nature of The Traitors is just such an exciting show that I think you don't really get like casual fan, like people who watch The Traitors just love it and are so captivated by it. So it makes sense that, you know, when they see somebody from the cast, like you remember those excited feelings, and you remember how fun it was to watch the show. So yeah, like
Yeah.
doesn't
Yeah.
surprise me. And when I've told people, hey, oh, I'm going to speak to Ash, she's going to be on the podcast, people are like, oh, that's so cool, like ask her this, and it's the same kind of questions, but
Yeah.
yeah, people are like, oh, that's that.
Yeah.
Tell me what she says
And
about
it's
this.
also crazy for me at work because I work in events.
Mhm.
I work in mostly public facing events at TFL. So, and TFL has a lot of employees. So even when I'm in the office, because obviously there's hundreds of people in the office, and like sometimes like I might be in the lobby of the building, and like staff members will come up to me like, "Oh my God, Ash, can we take a picture? Can we take?" And I'm like, I just feel like it's so bizarre.
I bet. Now we're nearing the end of our time together, so you have to tell us, where can we find you online? What should we be checking out?
Yes. So I'm on all the socials, but to be honest, I'm totally rubbish with X and TikTok. I sometimes go on there, me and Brian do like lives after Celebrity Big Brother or something. Do you know what I mean? But Instagram is my main one. Okay. So it's the real Ash BB. And so on Instagram, like before, I don't know if you saw on my Instagram, before Traitors took over my life, I like to cook and I like to share recipes and stuff. So I'm hoping to kind of start doing that again, but actually this time, maybe make videos and show people how I do stuff. So, and then also there's all the other stuff that we're constantly doing, which I always post on there. So Instagram is the place. And if you want to say hi, honestly, I try to answer every single DM that I get because I just think, you know what, without the people, we wouldn't have the show, would we? Do you know what I mean? So I'm just super, super grateful. Yeah.
Oh, fantastic. And I will put the link to that in the episode description. And yeah, I always see your updates on Instagram and all the fun things that you're doing, and seeing you with the other cast members, and you've been like with Traitors people from season 1, so it's fun to see you guys together.
Like I do hang out with Faye and Kieran and Wilf and Alyssa. Like those are the 4 that I tend to hang out with. Like I've had and all the others are absolutely lovely. Like every single one of them has reached out and just been like, "Hey, good luck," blah blah blah. Like, do you know what I mean? So they've all been super lovely, actually. So it's really nice. So I feel like it's almost like university. It's like alumni, isn't it? Like, so now it's our turn. But you know what? We'll, like, when 3rd season comes, we'll be like, "Hey guys, good luck to you." Like, do you know what I mean? We've been there. We can totally help you with anything. And that's the great thing about season 1 people. They've all just been like, anytime, like if you have any questions, we're totally here to help you, blah blah blah. So I love it. Yeah.
And this season of Traitors UK has just sort of dropped. Well, the first 3 episodes are now available in the US on Peacock, so there's like a whole new, and they'll have 1 episode a week. A sort of slow release. So there'll be
Are they going to have 1 episode a week then, are they?
Yeah, they're going to release it quite slowly, like they did with US.
Because my American friends are so happy. So I don't know if you know, but I lived in New York for several years.
Oh, wow.
Until I was 30. Yeah, back in my youth. So all my American friends have just been hounding me for the last couple of months. They're like, "Oh my God, please, how can we watch this?" So now they are so happy that it's out on Peacock in the United States. So
yeah, so there'll be a whole new like viewership who are like discovering the show and seeing you. So you will be getting messages from US fans,
I'm sure,
over the next little while.
And I believe that the US Traitors did really, really well. Like they loved it.
Yeah, super successful. Yeah.
And I met Alan when I went on This Morning, because I went on This Morning with Sonia and we were in the dressing room together because he was going on This Morning for something else.
Yeah.
So he's super lovely. I'm like, and I've been a fan of Alan's for like so many years. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So yeah.
Fantastic. And
I talk a lot, Matthew. Please just tell me to shut up.
I am happy for you to tell us anything you want to tell us. This is precious time.
Can you imagine what I'm like when I've had a drink?
Great fun, I bet.
X-rated. You'd have to put parental warnings on your podcast.
That's fine. You can say what you want on here. So Instagram, Ash is all over Instagram. Check it out. As for the podcast, I'll be back within the next couple of days with David Bloomberg for a special looking back grand recap episode for The Traitors US season 2. We've been sent loads of emails and YouTube comments and social media questions that we're really looking forward to getting our teeth into. So if you have sent me a question about The Traitors US 2, we shall be answering them. And you still have time as of Thursday, the 14th of March, to send me any questions you want David and I to discuss all about Traitors US Season 2 now that the season is finished. And you can keep up to date with the podcast on Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube at the Tradar Podcast, or on X at the Tradar Pod. And you can also email me and get in touch with any questions or nice comments, not nasty comments, at the Tradar Podcast at gmail.com. Ash, it has been absolutely fantastic having you on the podcast, having the first cast member from UK season 2.
And I've been such a fan of this podcast, as you know, as we've discussed. So I feel really honored that I'm the first one that you've had on, you know?
Yeah. I've been waiting for you. No one else could start. Ash, I will talk to you soon, I am sure. Take care and thank you.
Thank you. Bye.